Today we've got a big in-depth review of this, a Buyer Mineral B Crepe and Tortilla Pan. If you're looking for a good pan for crepes, tortillas, and flatbreads, is this a good one to get? I don't know. Let's find out. Hi, and welcome to Uncle Scott's Kitchen. Today is a great day here at Uncle Scott's Kitchen. Why? Because we get to review a brand new frying pan. I love doing these frying pan reviews. This one is a Buyer French, guaranteed made in France. You got to be careful these days. Buyer Mineral B Element Carbon Steel Crepe and Tortilla Pan. Now I recently got an email from a lady who said, you talk about pans too much, why don't you do a little more cooking in your videos? Today we're going to do both. We're going to review the heck out of this pan, really put it through its paces by cooking a bunch of food. We're going to cook crepes, obviously. I've never cooked a crepe before, but if this old dog can learn a new trick, then probably anybody can, and you can too. We'll see how that goes. Some tortillas. I really need to level up my tortilla game because of this guy. We eat a ton of tortilla and cheese around here. Also want to make some Piadine, which are kind of homemade Italian flatbreads, really delicious. You don't see them often in America. Pretty easy to make. We'll see if this pan can handle those. Maybe some pancakes, maybe some eggs. And regardless of what my wife says, you can never have too much kitchen stuff. I also picked up this crepe making kit with a traditional style wooden spatula, crepe turner, and some batter spreaders. And this Cuisinart 8-piece griddle breakfast and crepe set. Great for backyard cooking, tailgating, or camping. Maybe it'll work in the kitchen too. Anyway, about 23 bucks for this one, $20 for this, and in for about 60 on the pan. So roughly in for $100, $105. We'll see if this stuff seems like a good value as we go. Okay, let's jump right in and get to know the pan. It weighs in at about 3 pounds and is 2.5 millimeters thick, a solid medium weight pan. It arrived with no warping or wobble, flat as a pancake. Now these crepe and tortilla pans are dedicated, specialized pans for certain tasks with relatively short sides and lots of cooking surface area. Buyer makes this pan in 3 sizes. I went with the medium-sized version. It measures about 10.5 inches edge to edge and has about 9 inches diameter of cooking surface. The handle is long and thin and attached with rivets. It does get hot after 6 minutes or so on an eye, so you'll need to use a mitt when cooking. It's a coated handle instead of a bare carbon steel handle, so it feels nice to the touch. But correspondingly, this dictates that this is a pan for the stovetop. It can only go in the oven for 10 minutes or so, lest the heat can damage that coating on the handle. And this in turn means that the pan needs to be seasoned on the stovetop, not in the oven. Speaking of which, let's jump into the seasoning. This is a carbon steel pan, which means we'll need to season it, kind of sort of similar to seasoning cast iron. As such, it arrives with a protective coating of beeswax, hence the B in Mineral B, which we'll need to remove before seasoning. Now there's a little ambiguity here as the Buyer website says to remove the beeswax, while the world's smallest instruction booklet, if you can read it, says to remove almost all of it while leaving a very thin layer. Now it doesn't matter too much, but note for this pan that I am not using the potato peel, salt, and oil method we've used for other carbon steels. I'm only using hot water from my wife's tea kettle to remove almost all of the beeswax and hope that that very thin layer remains. Now having done that and still following the directions, here the pan goes on a burner with 1 millimeter or so of oil. I'm using veggie here. I bring it up to smoking, pour it out, wipe it out really well, let it cool, and that's it. And note here that there's only a hint of color change. The pan is still very shiny and new looking. We followed the instructions exactly, and the pan has its initial seasoning and is now ready to cook. We're not going to worry about seasoning the pan over and over and over to develop color before we start cooking. Cook, cook, cook more and worry about the seasoning less is good advice, I think. Now let's cook some food. Since it's a crepe pan, we're going to start with crepes. There are lots of crepe batter recipes out there, but my wife found one that looked promising and was nice enough to make the batter for me. Flour, eggs, milk, sugar, melted butter go in. Side note here, I will try to get links up to any recipes I use in today's video. Those will be below or around the video depending on where you watch this. Whisk and add these ingredients slowly so your batter stays smooth. She gets that ready to go for me. Thank you to my wife for doing that. Now, I've never made a crepe before, and I was surprised at how liquid and runny the batter seemed to be. Not really what I was expecting. Now, she just made that batter for me, which was very nice. She also asked if I wanted to use the Cuisinart batter dispenser that came as part of that 8-piece set. Yes, I said, only she didn't realize that the dispenser has a removable bottom. She picked it up, poured the batter in, and lo and behold, the container didn't fill up. So pro tip here, if you're going to use a batter dispenser or any other kind of container, double check that the bottom is attached before you try and pour in any liquid. I heated the pan, got some oil in there, in goes the batter, and immediately I realized that the thinness of the batter was actually perfect as I rotated the pan and let the batter cover the cooking surface area. I let them cook for a bit, lift the edge just to see what was going on under there, cooked a few, and then I got the hang of it. Note that I can move them around and rotate them, and when it's time to turn them, they lift with no sticking. They browned up nicely. I cooked the rest of the batch, and by the end of it, I had the hang of it. And I gotta say, actually not too difficult at all. And how'd they turn out? Let's compare the crepe picture that De Buyer uses on their website to a picture of my very first crepes. Not too bad for a first timer. Excuse me for a second. And I gotta say, if you can cook an omelet or a pancake, there is absolutely no reason to be intimidated by a crepe. You can do it. And they taste good too. My wife likes them sweeter with fruit, but I like them more savory with prosciutto and cheese. And as for this De Buyer pan, a crepe pan easily making tasty crepes the first time you try it. I really like it when a product works well the first time I use it, and we're off and cooking. Next morning we made pancakes. Interesting notes here. It took a couple of pancakes to figure out the right burner and heat level to use, then I got it dialed in. Here you can see that the pancakes would actually slide around, so nothing is sticking on the pan. I made big ones, small ones, all sizes, nice bubbling and browning. For fun, I got a little overconfident and tried to flip one, and it didn't go well. Then it became a personal challenge until I got them to flip correctly. Now, the Cuisinart batter dispenser was surprisingly helpful here. Much less dripping and mess than using a measuring cup, and it allows you to do things like make your initials or create a pancake that looks like a world-famous rodent for your little son. After the pancakes, with a hot oil pan ready to go, I couldn't help myself, so I jumped right in with a proverbial fried egg test. Since I already had oil in the pan, I didn't use any butter, and I had to lift an edge up just a little with a spatula. Undaunted, I followed up immediately with a second egg, only I used butter this time, and turned up the heat just a smidge, and boom. Nice non-stick slide. And maybe I should leave the egg sliding for pans with higher sides. I darn near slid my egg right out of the pan, but at least we know it's not sticking. At this point, the pan had been on the heat here for well over half an hour. Other than lifting up the corner of that egg, there's no sticking so far. Cleanup was easy with just water and paper towels, and note that we're starting to get a little color change on the pan. Next up are the Piadine, delicious Italian flatbreads. They're round, they can be filled with any variety of toppings, then typically folded over and sliced, although you could roll them up and use them kind of like a wrap. Now, you don't often see Piadine in America. They're pretty rare. They're actually pretty rare even in Italy. You don't see them in Rome or Florence very often. I had never had one until I went to an opera in Ferrara. Little Puccini Turandot. And what you realize when you see Puccini in Italy is not only is it Nessun Dorma, it's Nessun Mangia. No snack bar, no tub of popcorn, no milk duds, no supersized drink. So after the opera, I was starved. I was walking down the street. I stopped in this little place. They said they had Piadine. Figured I'd try one. And immediately that first bite put it on my list of inspirational foods. Now, what's an inspirational food? It's something that I typically find while traveling, a food that I know I can't find back in America, but it's so good that it inspires me to want to learn how to cook it. And these piadine were that good. Here's how to make the piadine. It's a simple flatbread dough with no yeast or long rising times, typically with a short list of 5 simple ingredients. Type 00 flour, warm water, salt, baking soda, and lard. Now, you can substitute shortening or olive oil, but if you really want to make them the traditional way, you have to use old school animal fat lard. And let's be honest here, animals are delicious. Whisk your salt and baking soda into the flour so that they are mixed in well. Then dump out the flour and make a little well in the middle. Into that hole, place your softened lard in a little warm water and start mixing them together with your fingers. Keep kneading and adding water bit by bit until everything is incorporated, and keep kneading for 10 minutes or so. I like using a pasta board, which has a little lip that prevents the board from moving around when I knead and roll out doughs. This dough is a little tacky and will pull up the remaining flour. No need to keep flouring the surface. Roll it out into a log, cover it, and let it rest 15 minutes up to a half an hour. Now, normally this recipe makes 6 piadine, 11 inches or so wide, but I'm cutting the dough into 8 pieces here so that they fit better into the medium-sized debouille pan. So cut the dough, roll them into little balls, cover them, and again let them rest 15 minutes to a half hour or so. Next, roll them out into flatbreads. You might need to flour the tops just a little with the roller sticks, but try not to make them too floury. I cheated and used one of my wife's cake pans to estimate the size. You can place them between sheets of wax paper to keep them from sticking. Now here I have my pan heating on medium, maybe a skosh higher. In go the piadine. Note that I can rotate them and move them around. They take a couple of minutes or so per side. You'll see bubbles forming. These are okay if they are small, but you can pop them if they get too big, as if they're too big, they'll pull up the dough and cause uneven cooking. If you start getting wisps of smoke and they cook in under a minute, the pan is too hot. You want a little color and some darkened spots, but make sure you don't overcook them. Note that these are not sticking at all. Then repeat until you have a nice stack of piadine. Note that in Italian, a piadina is singular. If you have 2 or more, plural, they are piadine. There's your free Italian lesson for the day. They're thicker than a tortilla. They should remain pliable, not be too crunchy, and have a nice chew. Now, I couldn't help myself and I ate one of these while I was cooking the others, but you can keep these for several days and use them at room temperature or reheat them. Now it's time to fill and devour them. Here's where you can get creative. My first inspirational piadina had sausage, peppers, and grilled eggplant. I'm recreating that here. I already had some roasted peppers and I grilled up some sausages and cooked some eggplant in olive oil earlier in the day. In they go. For another one you might commonly see in the Emilia-Romagna region, a little prosciutto crudo, arugula, and some shaved Parmigiano. And you can also fill and fold the same dough and make a cassone, or what we might call a calzone here in America. Here I'm using pepperoni, mozzarella, and red sauce. Grill it the same way. Maybe use a skosh less heat and turn it a few more times just so that that middle cooks before the outside gets done. It's kind of sort of like a little Italian hot pocket. Absolutely delicious. I could just devour these things all day long. I absolutely love them. I'm not sure why they haven't taken off here in America. The word pea is not very palatable, so piadina, they might need to change the name up a little bit. Who knows? Now, how did our carbon steel pan perform? Now, the piadine themselves did not stick at all, but some of that lard and excess flour essentially cooked in the pan for over half an hour and kind of got stuck to the pan. So the food didn't stick, a little bit of that excess lard and flour did. And that's what you'll find with carbon steel. They are not totally non-stick. So here I definitely had some flour and lard fused to the pan, and I had to use some steel wool to remove it. But the good thing about carbon steel is that it's almost indestructible. So I scrubbed the heck out of this one with steel wool, which did remove a lot of my initial seasoning. But all I did was a stovetop maintenance seasoning with some grapeseed oil. Actually got some great color on the pan and was ready to go on cooking. No big deal. Tortillas. As Buyer markets this pan as a crepe and tortilla pan, I think it's only fair that we spend a little bit of time on that and tortilla part. I do a lot of cooking for a 2-year-old, and even though the little guy likes them, I'm not proud of my soggy, floppy microwave tortilla and cheese that I give him. So let's focus a little on leveling up and improving those tortillas. I'm going to do this in 2 different ways. First, using store-bought tortillas, I got 1 level higher just by making a tortilla and cheese on the stovetop. It takes about 4 minutes instead of 1 in the microwave. It gives the tortillas a nice chew and is about 1,000 times better than the ones I was making. You like it?
Yeah.
All right. Second, I wanted to see if I could learn how to make homemade flour tortillas. The ingredients for a homemade flour tortilla are almost the exact same as those for Piadine. All-purpose flour instead of type 00, but still salt, water, lard, and just baking powder instead of baking soda. Mix the dry ingredients well, slowly incorporate the lard and water, form a nice dough, let it rest a bit, form dough balls, roll them out, and cook them up. Now mine weren't perfectly round like those made by a machine. They were a little odd shaped, but that's okay, so am I. They cooked up very similarly to the Piadine. Note that the tortilla themselves don't stick, but a little lard and flour did here again. I used some store-bought tortillas as a guide and flipped mine when they looked like they were about the same as those in terms of color. And these things are really good. I've been using them to make tortilla and cheese for the little guy all week, and he seems to really like them. Okay, let's take a final look at the seasoning. The flour tortillas made a mess just like the Piadine, and again I hit the pan with steel wool, and here I decided to do a maintenance seasoning on an electric flat top. Since many people have electric flat tops, I moved down to the man cave and tried a quick seasoning on my flat top electric stove. I began heating the pan, in goes a millimeter or so of oil, get it coated nicely, brought it up to smoking, poured out the oil, wiped it really well and let it smoke a bit more, then let it cool. I repeated that process again just for fun, and I am happy to report 2 main points here. 1, you can indeed season this pan on a flat top electric stove, no need for the oven. Most of the color on the sides was already there, but we got lots of color change and seasoning on the cooking surface, and that's the most important part. And 2, I made sure to use the widest burner I had so that I got the most even heating. I brought it up to high heat and back a few times, and it's still flat as a pancake. I didn't experience any warping issues. Now, I didn't try it on my induction burner because that burner has warped a few nice pans, and when they warped, it was immediate. So I completely chickened out on induction and didn't even want to take a chance. And just to double check that everything is okay after the steel wool scrubbings and maintenance seasoning, I cooked some more eggs and they are non-stick, sliding perfectly. And really look how nicely that seasoning is darkening in and developing. I'm really impressed with the way this pan is taking the seasoning. Okay, it's time to wrap this up. First, I want to say I think we did a pretty good job today of blending talking about pans with doing a lot of cooking. So I hope everybody's happy with that. Now on to the products. Okay, for the Cuisinart 8-piece set, I'm going to give it a thumb sideways. There was nothing wrong with it. I thought it was okay. I liked the batter dispenser, but the spatulas and other pieces didn't feel like they were superb quality, not old world craftsmanship by any means. So I think if I had to do over again, I would buy a batter dispenser and then separately buy some heavier duty spatulas. Just me. Nothing wrong with it. It's just okay though. Now as for the traditional crepe spatula and spreader kit, it was not absolutely necessary, but I would call this a nice to have. Good quality, it worked just fine. It made my crepes feel a little bit more official, if you will. So good quality, it worked well, not absolutely necessary, but I do give it a thumbs up. And as for the star of the show, the Buyer French carbon steel crepe and tortilla pan, I thought it did a great job. Everything I cooked in it turned out really nicely. I thought it did a great job. It's taking the seasoning really well. The seasoning is developing nicely. Good build quality. I've always had good luck with my other de Buyer pans. I think they're a good, solid brand. They make really good stuff. About $60, I feel like that's a pretty solid value as well. So for the de Buyer Crepe and Tortilla Pan, I give it an unhesitating thumbs up. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the old channel. If you didn't enjoy the video, please subscribe anyway. Leave your questions and compliments below the video if you have time. Check out the recipe and shopping links. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.